Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off of my shoulders, just wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostrowski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
Welcome, Bills Mafia. I am the Big O, Jerry Ostrowski. This is the Big O Show, and as always, a show about the Buffalo Bills by a former Buffalo Bill, and we're going to get into my final thoughts on this 2025 NFL Draft as the Buffalo Bills head to Thursday night, and there's a lot of question marks, and we had some things happen today. Rumor mill has started on some a specific player that we'll talk about, and there's some interesting ties to this player and the Buffalo Bills that we'll get into. But one thing I want to talk about before we go any further, I just wanted to say today, the great Steve Mongo McMichael, former Chicago Bear Hall of Famer. Mongo also went on to have an unbelievable professional wrestling career, was part of the Four Horsemen with Ric Flair. And Mongo, part of that 85 Bears team that was just absolutely dominant. But Steve Mongo McMichael passes away today at the age of 67 from ALS. So prayers to his family, and I hope that he finally finds peace and he is healed, because we know just how absolutely awful and terrible that disease is. So prayers up to Steve and his family. So again, Big O Show here. We're going to talk about the NFL Draft. Found some interesting draft tendencies that I wanted to get into real fast before we got into some specific players. But NFL.com, they have a new section over there where you can get some advanced analytics and some inside stuff about the teams that you love. And of course, we love the Buffalo Bills, and so I went and clicked on that. And NFL.com had some interesting things. First off, they said the Bills have selected a premium position. Premium position would be quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, edge rusher, defensive tackle, and cornerback, with 8 out of 10 picks in the top 50 under Brandon Beane. The two non-premium picks that they made were Dalton Kincaid, tight end, in 2023, and linebacker Tremaine Edmonds in 2018. So a little bit there about the Bills and Brandon Beane and his tendencies. The Bills have selected at least one wide receiver in 7 out of 8 drafts under Beane. We also know that wide receiver is an area of need for this football team, especially a guy that can stretch the field deep. There seems to be a bunch of those type of guys with second and third day grades. I would expect to see wide receiver later in this draft, not early. Now, I will preface all these things that I talk about with this. We all know there are no guarantees when it comes to the draft. Anything can happen. If crazy stuff goes down and all of a sudden players are sitting there that Beane had no possible inclination that they would be there, if they're rated high on his board, you best believe he will probably take a crack at them, especially wideouts. But we're talking what we have seen over the last 2 to 3 months in analyzing the data, analyzing the needs of the team, and now we're analyzing tendencies and things like that. So we will give our thoughts. When I say our thoughts, me, Jerry Ostrowski, here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, I'll give you what I think is going to happen tomorrow night. DraftKings has come out with first-round position probabilities for the Buffalo Bills. And, of course, the number one position that DraftKings sees the Bills going after, 37% chance they go defensive line, 25% chance cornerback. Here's the area we're going to talk about in a minute. Safety, 11%, and that's the third choice overall. Safety, Fourth is a tie between wide receiver and O-line at 9%, running back 3%, and tight end 1%. So let's go back to the safety situation. And some interesting things have been happening over the last couple days. There have been some mock drafts by some very high-level guys, some guys that big network dudes that do a lot of these things, and basically all they do is cover the draft. But the name that has come up and tied to the Bills is Georgia safety Malachi Starks. And if you were to look at Malachi Starks, if you see him on film, watched him play, Starks is a big-time playmaker in the SEC over the last 3 seasons for the Georgia Bulldogs. Tremendous player. Brings a good football IQ. He tackles. His movement ability to play free, strong, and slot. So he can play a bunch of different positions. And I think the interesting thing about that evaluation is he's not just a safety. He can also come down and play over the slot as well. He isn't a rare athlete. What that means is he's not a guy like Travis Hunter. Okay? There's only so many of those players. But Starks is more than adequate, and he's a starting caliber player for the back end of any defense. Now, why would Malachi Starks be rumored or positioned possibly to the Buffalo Bills? Some draft places, PFF being one of those, has Starks rated as their 8th rated player. 8th rated player. Now, we know the NFL's kind of hang up or inability to see a reason to take a safety in the first round, although there are safeties out there that do get taken in the first round. There's a couple this year that have first-round grades. Starks obviously being one of them. But the tie to the Bills is this, and this also comes from NFL.com in researching things before the show. Current Bills cornerbacks coach Jamal Addae, or Addae, A-D-D-A-E, Addae or Addae, I apologize if I'm butchering that, who has stops on his resume at Georgia, Miami, and Virginia Tech as a college football coach, among others, was the coach that recruited Malachi Starks to Georgia. So, Bills cornerbacks coach has a big-time relationship, not just with Starks, but also Starks' family. So there's the tie. You've got a coach on the staff that's known this kid since high school. He knows what he's all about. Obviously, watch the film. I've seen the film. I have no issues if the Bills take Starks at 30 and or move up. Now, we'll talk about those scenarios in a little bit. But just something to think about. And I do want to say this. And Joey brings up a point. Starks 40 time is 4.50. Okay. That's awesome. Other than a over-the-top burner wide receiver, when have we ever sat there and after the combine timed a draft pick or an NFL player in the 40-yard dash after the combine? I think 40 times get a little blown out of proportion, to be perfectly honest with you. There's more that goes into playing a position than just how fast you are. And I just read the things that make him a tremendous player. When you talk about things like great football IQ, tackles, moves, all those things, understands the game, anticipation, knowledge, and a firm hold or grasp of your position and craft will trump pure speed any day of the week. There are a bunch of guys playing the NFL that don't run 4.5s. It's one of those things where, and I get you, Joey, I'm not picking on you. I get you, but you gave me an opportunity to talk about it, and I wanted to talk about it. So I appreciate you putting that comment up in the comments. I do, really. I'm not picking on you, and I'm not upset. I'm just saying it gave me the opportunity to talk about something that I've wanted to talk about. It's just like the kid, the Campbell kid from LSU that is projected in the top 5 of the draft tomorrow night, the big, tall offensive tackle. He plays in the elite league in this country in college football. He plays in the SEC. He plays weekly against most of the guys that are going to get picked in the next 3 days. Okay? He plays against elite talent. His arm measurement was 31. And that threw the football world into a tizzy. And we're going to go ahead and basically, throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we're going to say, well, we can't draft this guy. His arms aren't long enough. Folks, this is a big, physical, athletic tackle. If you don't want to take him, I will. 31-inch arms have nothing to do with it. The only thing that maybe I would ever question or look at, especially if you're playing in a bad weather city like Buffalo, like Green Bay, like Chicago, you're playing outside with no dome, and you're like a Kyler Murray, and you've got really suspect hand size. That's one thing I would question, because cold weather, it's hard to hold on to the football to begin with and all that. But no, I think that really interesting development today with this Malachi Starks deal. Now, granted, this could all be smoke. And I know a lot of people think that Beane doesn't throw smoke out there. He does. He throws a lot of it. We had a situation last year where we had some pretty reliable sources that said that there was no way that they would ever take Keon Coleman, and they went out of their way to make it happen. So I don't believe most things, 24 hours or less from the draft. But that is something that is very, very interesting. So when I look at my big board, these are prospects that I'm talking about pick number 30. I'm not talking about 56. I'm not talking about 62. I'm talking about pick number 30. Okay? And I believe this is my top list if the Bills stay at 30, or if they package some picks to move up into the first round. It needs to be to get one of these guys. First, we're going to look at the defensive interior line. And you know that I am absolutely in love with Kenneth Grant. If you've watched this show, if you've listened to anything we've done, to me, he is the number one player on the board for me for the Buffalo Bills. And again, this isn't my number one player in the draft. My number one player in the draft is Carter from Penn State. I have him in front of Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is second. I think both of them are generational. But when you're that close to the football and the things that he does, you change games. So Carter's actually my first rated player in this draft. But this is a board I put together for the Bills at 30, or if they decide to use picks and trade up. Now, granted, we looked at this a few weeks ago. I'm not sure the Bills can get, if they wanted to get above 15 or up to 15, they could do it. It might cost them a little bit too much. But I will say this. Yesterday at Brandon Beane's press conference, if you listen to it, and I did forensically, meaning I was trying to hear clues, maybe hear tells. And these guys are so dang good. I mean, like I said, they say things on purpose. They throw stuff up there. But if you listen to Beane's press conference yesterday, he said one thing that was really, really interesting to me. He was really excited they had 2 picks in the second round. To me, what he said was an indication that if the Bills wanted to make a play, and there's been some rumblings like a Will Johnson from Michigan is falling down the board. Now, what I heard today from Joe Marino, that he's got a degenerative knee issue, I'm probably not as fired up as I was before hearing that. But guys falling down the board, the Bills have 30, and they do have 2 second-round picks, so they can use that second-round pick, because without a third, it's going to be hard to do anything without moving one of those second-round picks. So they have extra firepower, and then they still have a second-round pick. And we'll talk in a little bit about it, but I just find it hard to believe that Beane stays with all 10 picks. There's going to be movement somewhere. And so my list, as far as staying in the first round, picking a 30 or moving up to get somebody, Kenneth Grant's my number one. We know him, rare combination of quickness and size at the nose tackle position, and we need a nose. Strength to dominate single blocks, and he holds up well against double teams. Watching him on film, he's got powerful hands. He has some pass rush moves and some hand stuff, the club and rip and things like that. But he's got to get better at putting his plan together. His pre-snap plan needs to be better. And what better place for a guy to go to that needs to develop those things, that has them but needs to refine them, than a team that now has, 5 defensive line-related coaches? There's a ton of guys here to try to bolster the pass rush. So I feel good about that. Only thing about Grant, you'd like to see that hair on fire motor a little bit more consistently than you see it on film. But I will say that when he's in attack mode, he is an imposing, impressive player. So Kenneth Grant's my first guy. 2 other D linemen that I really, really like. One I like more than the other. My second guy at D-line, if you're sitting there, Grant's gone, one of these guys is there, I'm happy with it. The first one being Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. And when you look at Nolan, the thing I like about him is he's a physical freak. He looks the part, and he is not polished at all. But he does play. He does the one thing that I really like out of my interior defensive lineman. You don't have to teach him how to play the run. Okay, his run defense is his strength. He can stop the run. We need to get stronger up the middle. And by the way, if you're in the comments tonight, like Bills fan 7883, Joey Hatch, Happy Wolverine, Daniel, if you guys are over in the comments, Richard Rush, as always, put up over there who you like, who you don't like, what you want to see the Bills do. Do you want to see him trade? Do you want to see him stay? So put your comments over there, and if they're good, we'll get them up on the show. But Walter Nolan I really like. And again, he's another guy that needs to continue to grow his pre-snap plan and his hand usage. And once he does that and the light switch goes off, you're going to have a really, really good football player. So I like Walter Nolan because you'll hear me say this term a lot. He's got things you can't see. And those are those attributes that you can't see. And, you're talking about leadership, want to, all those things. He's got those. And that's highly important. That's a Bill Parcells term. One thing that he always says, like, yeah, that's great. You told me the 40 time. You told me how high he jumps, his broad jump. That's great. But what about the things you can't see? And he's got those. My third choice, and if you've heard me on the show before and you've heard me on other shows, might be a silly reason why, but it's just a personal preference. It's my board, so I can choose the way I want. But third is Derek Harmon from Oregon. The thing I don't like about Harmon, he's a long-legged, high-hipped guy. Really, honestly, he can play nose guard in our defense. But Harmon's probably more of a 4 technique, 4 eye, and a 3-4 front type of guy, basically Pittsburgh. Harmon had 1 year of notable production. That season, he showcased himself as a high IQ player, lots of competitiveness, and I agree with that. I watched him on film. He plays hard, and he's got great quicks. And like I said, he can be an effective 3 technique for a even front, but I do believe our nose plays a lot like a 3 technique. Being long-legged, can he anchor and take on that constant double team? So those are my 3 defensive tackles, and they're first for a reason. I want us to take interior D tackle first. But if you listen to the press conference, Brandon Beane did state this draft, the strength of this draft is the defensive line, that being defensive interior and edge. Knowing we need cornerback and there's not many of them, and the fact we got 2 second-round picks, you kind of know where I'm going here. So next up are my cornerbacks, the cornerbacks that I like. I've got 4 of them on the list. If they're there at 30 or they're in a range that we can trade up to without mortgaging the future, I would very, very happily accept any of these 4. my number one cornerback on the board that I love, and the number one cornerback that I don't know how we can get it done because I think he goes before 15, and that's Jahdae Barron from Texas. You want to talk about a versatile player? He is an absolute. He's dominant. He's inside and out. This is a guy that can play outside. He can play nickel. He can play man. He can play off in zone. And a lot of times for Texas, he did all three in the same game. And when I say all three, he actually played a little bit of safety as well. But if you look at his instincts, he's a natural zone defender, and he's got great anticipation and athletic ability to close. Play back, play off coverage, read through the quarterback's eyes, see the play develop, T-step, get downhill, and make a play. He's a guy that can play a lot of cover 3 or quarters heavy schemes. He'd fit well with Buffalo. He's a willing tackler. He'll put his face in there. And I really, really like Jahdae Barron, but I just don't see any way that he's available in an area we can either trade up to or stick and pick at 30. My second guy on this list, and this is before I heard of the knee situation, but I'm still keeping him at 2, and that's Will Johnson. And I think it was Joey earlier in the comments talked about Johnson being a very, very smooth cornerback with his footwork. He's physical. He covers. He was a 4.56 guy. I agree with all those comments. Johnson's long. He's a lean quarterback. He's got elite foot quickness, change of direction, fluidity. His limited long speed will create questions about his man coverage. So, there is an issue with elite speed, and that's trying to carry like Tyreek Hill 50 yards downfield. Sometimes he loses guys over the top, which is a little bit tough sometimes in man coverage in the NFL. But having him play off coverage with his eyes on the ball as his own scheme wide cornerback could allow him to make impactful plays more often. This is a guy that's projected as a CB1, as is Barron. So I like Will Johnson. He has had some injury situations, some injury history. Hopefully he gets over that, because it'd be a shame if he wasn't able to fulfill a full career in the NFL, because he's that good. He's that type of talent. My third cornerback on the board, and this is the guy that I think, if you look at most mock drafts, is going to be there at 30. Actually, if Brandon Beane wanted to roll the dice and the guys that he sees on his board aren't there, and as you know, Beane, he's not going to reach. He's going to always draft value. So you could trade 30 and get some extra picks, move back into the second, have 3 second-round picks, package whatever you got there in your 4s and go to 3, and now have 4 really impactful players in 64 picks. That's the cornerback from Ole Miss, Trey Amos. I think Amos brings a really good blend of size and speed, movement skills. His coverage scheme versatility at cornerback position is really good. He's got explosiveness, but his speed isn't anything special. This is a guy whose probably floor is, as far as the floor, meaning the lowest thing he'll end up being is like a cornerback 2, but his potential, and he has that potential to be a cornerback 1. So I think, like Barron, he's very well-rounded, understands zone concepts real well, not the tackler that Barron is. And that's one thing about Amos that I'm a little bit iffy on. If you know our cornerbacks and how they play, you've got to be willing to stick your face in there and make tackles and run support, because you're playing contain quite a bit and cover 2 fronts. And, Amos, that's something he's going to have to be a little bit more willing to do. My fourth corner, and I've got 4 corners on this list where I had 3 D tackles. I got 4 because I personally think it's going to be really, really important for the Bills to get a corner early in this draft, because I just don't see a ton of value later, especially like day 3. Definitely after day 2, I think the guys that are going to be players are going to be in those first couple rounds. And my fourth guy on this list is Maxwell Hairston, the corner from Kentucky. Not big, man. He's like wiry, kind of lanky, but man, he competes. He competes. He gets his hands on receivers and bump and run. He can also play off coverage. As a zone-heavy corner, the thing that's really, really good about him is he's got that speed and that aggression and those instincts to where, again, he can play off, he can read what's happening, and he can break downhill and make plays. He's got a chance to develop into a cornerback 2 type guy in the league. I like Hairston as well, but I've seen him projected more as a day 2 guy. I don't know if you go for him at 30. He was in the building at One Bills Drive for a top 30 visit, as was Amos. But it'll be interesting to see what Brandon Beane thinks about Hairston. If he's there and say the Bills stick and pick at 30 and he's there, do they take him or do they trade out or do something else? So interesting stuff there. And then I put again on here, we talked about him earlier, Malachi Starks from Georgia. And the reason I put him on there is because of what was said today in the news and amongst national media, that he does have ties to Buffalo, and a lot of people have mocked him to the Bills. So you already know about him. I told you all about him. I would have no issues if a guy that on some lists is rated in the top 10 would become a Buffalo Bill in the first round. I've only got one edge on the list. And the reason why is I think that a lot of the edges, the ones that would be guys we definitely want, would be go a little bit early. I think there's a ton of value in the second and third days at edge. But I do have one guy on here that I like. And if he was around at 30 and we were picking at 30 and they decided to go edge that early, which I don't think they will, but they might. That's Mikael Williams from Georgia. Guy's a long, strong dude. I think he's 265, 275. He's a versatile edge guy. If you've noticed something about the guys on my list, you got to have a motor to play. That's really, really important to me. I want to see you compete from the first snap to the last snap, no matter what the scoreboard says. That says a lot to me about your 1-2 and about, do you care about playing this game the proper way? I think Mikael Williams does play this game the proper way. Big motor, always running hot. His pass rush profile, his consistency, win percentage are lower than ideal for a projected top 20 pick. And that's the thing. This guy's a projected top 20 guy, but his floor as an elite run defender is high. I would say probably has the natural ability to be a better run player than Greg Rousseau, and Rousseau is one of the best out there. You looked at Rousseau's contract, his redo this year. A lot of that was built off of his versatility as far as being a strong run defender and also a guy that can rush the passer a little bit. But he is a strong run defender, and his build is really interesting. I think he's a guy that can put on weight. He can get bigger and become even more dominant. And I think that stuff alone is worth taking a chance with in that range. And he fits in an odd or an even front. So I think that he's another one of those developmental guys like Oladipo from UCLA. I don't have him on this list, but I love him. That's my I can't say he's a sleeper, but as far as a guy that I really think has a tremendous amount of upside, and a guy that has only played the position for one season. He was an outside linebacker before they moved him. He's a guy who, the sky's the limit on. I mean, you're going to get a lot out of that guy as he learns. So that's why I'm saying I've only got one edge rusher on here, because in the second round, if Oladipo was there and they decide to take him, I would be ecstatic. Absolutely ecstatic. So my final thoughts on this draft before we get out of here on today's Big O show. And again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, rate the show, tell your friends. And one of the things we're doing is some people like to watch on X, and we had our shows on X or Twitter for a while. The problem with that is, we do this to try to make a little bit of money sometimes, and they don't count towards anything. So if you can tell your friends we're going to be on YouTube exclusively, that would be awesome. We might put some of our stuff out there on Twitter from now on, but right now we are exclusively a YouTube channel. Then we'll be on the podcast platforms the next morning. So If you were an ex-watcher, I apologize. But as far as Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, best thing for us is we make sure everybody understands we need to watch on YouTube. So thanks as always, because you guys do an unbelievable job watching our content and also listening to our content on the podcast platform. So thank you very much. But just final thoughts. And my final thought is this, to trade or not to trade. And if you look at this thing, the Bills have the draft capital to move up if they so choose. What Brandon Beane has to decide is at what level do they decide to do it? Do you go ahead and swing for the fences and try to get to 15? Me personally, I would think that the highest they would go is probably 20 and maybe maneuver around in the 20s to get a guy that has slipped to them. That would be my guesstimation. Again, when you get to 30, they haven't traded, nobody's there, and players of value off the Bills board, not the entire NFL board, but the Bills board aren't there, you can also move back. And Beane has a history of doing that as well. I do believe that the Bills want a high-end corner, and they also want that defensive tackle position very, very highly. So whoever is available, I think that's what you'll see them do. But I'm excited about tomorrow, big time excited about tomorrow, because this is one of those, I love draft chaos. Absolutely love it. And I'm one of those guys that wants as many trades and as many crazy picks as possible. Best thing that can always happen is an early run on a position that doesn't have a ton of players and there's a lot of need, and you get fireworks. So hopefully we get some fireworks tomorrow night, and when those fireworks happen, it pushes those guys down to us in the 30 range, or at least in the 20s, where we can make a move and get that impact player we need to get this defense up to speed with our championship offense, and what Joe Brady and Josh Allen have done on that side of the ball. But again, folks, this is the Big O Show on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We are powered by Believe. Rate the show, like the show, subscribe to the show, tell your friends. You guys are awesome. I'm having a blast doing this. Remember, we've started the Overreaction Buffalo Daily Report. That'll be on tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And those are on every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And we'll bring you the latest news from one Bills drive in the Buffalo Bills. So don't forget to hit those shows as well on YouTube. Again, folks, thanks as always for watching and listening. We'll be back next Wednesday. I'm sure we'll be talking about and evaluating this draft of the Bills. And we will have instant reaction tomorrow night. So if you want to hear what we have to say about the pick and or the trade or whatever Brandon Beane and company decide to do, we will have an instant reaction show tomorrow night to talk about that, as well as our standard show on Sunday night. So, folks, thanks again as always. Much love, and go Bills.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma. Same old dreams hanging off my shoulders. Wishing and waiting on a shoe.